All right, so in order for us to test fully this method right here, we're going to have to test this scenario, this scenario, this scenario, and then finally this scenario. So this is when everything is fine. So what we're going to do is actually test that we can make a payment first, right? We're going to test the happy path first. So let's go ahead and press Shift Command T and then create a test and simply say OK. So right here, let's go ahead and simply say private. And then what I'm going to do is actually go back in here. So we need everything from here, right? So let me simply put it like that. And this won't be final. And the same with this one. And the same with this one, right? Now we actually need the under test. So private and then payment service. And then this will be under and then test. There we go. Now let's go ahead and set the before each, right? And I'm going to say under test equals to and then new and then payment service. Now we're going to pass the customer repository, the payment repository, and the card charger, and that with semicolon. Now what we need to do is actually mock, right? So we need to mock the repository. So at mock, add and then mock, and the same for the payment charger. So we're going to mock everything, right? Because remember, we've tested this and we know that it works, and we already tested this as well, right? And this we haven't tested, right? But this is an interface, right? We will also test it in isolation later on. So we actually don't need the static import there. And there we go. Now, in order for me to initialize the mocks, so Mockito annotations dot init mocks, and then say this. Now let's go ahead and create a test. So Control Enter, test method. It should, and then charge card successfully, just like that. Enter, and there we go. So what we need, so let's go back to our service. So right here we need a valid customer, right? So let's go ahead and simply say given UID and then customer and then ID. So customer ID equals to UI.random UID. So let's say given, and let's import the static method from BDD Mockito. There we go. And then customer repository, and then dot, oh actually here, dot, and then find by ID. And right here, let's simply pass the actual customer ID, right? Dot will return, and then here let's simply say optional, and then dot, and then of. And right here what I'm going to do is actually say mock and then customer dot and then class. So maybe you are a bit confusing here, but I'm going to explain this in a second. I'm going to import the static call, just like, oh actually not that, basically I need this static import, right? So here, so basically I'm mocking this customer right here because we're not using it, right? I could have simply said new and then customer, and then, oh actually yeah, so we have two constructors, right? So we can mock it, or we can use this constructor which takes no arguments, which is fine, right? Or we can use all the other constructors, yeah? But usually if you have a class with a bunch of fields being passed, you can simply mock it, right? So let's simply mock it. And now what do we need? Let's go back to our service class. So here, so we know that this now will pass, and let's give a currency. So this will be a currency currency equals to, and let's simply say USD, right? And now this will be the actual payment. So for the payment, let's go ahead and simply say payment and then request. There we go, equals to, and then new, and then payment request. And here we need to say new payment. There we go. And inside we need to pass the payment ID. So we're going to pass no there, customer ID. This will be the customer ID there. And then amount, new big decimal. And this will be £100. Oh, actually $100. And then currency and source. So this will be the card. So card 123XX, for example. And then description. Let's simply say donation like that. And there we go. So I think I'm going to inline this currency. Oops, just like that. And it looks cleaner. Now we can say that when under test dot and then charge card, let's simply pass the customer ID there and then the payment request. So at this stage, we know that everything is fine. So what's going to happen? Let's go back to our service class here. So we know that we need to mark this card payment charger, right? So when that is called with these parameters, right? With these parameters, we need to return a card payment charge with a field with is debited true. So let's go ahead and do that. So in fact, in here, so before the actual when, so let's go ahead and simply say given and then card payment charger dot and then charge. And here we need to pass a few things. So what we're going to do here is actually pass everything from payment, right? So let's go back here and steal all of this. And this is the same, right? So let's put it there. You can see that works. Now I'm going to say dot will return and then new and then card payment charge and then is debited true, just like that, right? So let's actually have some comments, right? So customer exists and then payment request, and right here card is charged successfully. And when we charge the card, right, what's going to happen? Let's go ahead and see what's going to happen. So we know that we will set the payment, right, and then we will save it here. So what we're going to do is actually capture this payment here, right? We need to capture the payment and make sure that the ID, or actually, and make sure that we set the customer ID correctly. So let's go ahead and, in fact, let's go ahead and create the argument capture differently. So here, what I'm going to do is simply say then, and then argument, and then capture. Oops. And this will be payment, and then request, and then payment request argument capture equals to argument capture for class and then payment request. I think it's like that, right? So there we go. Now we can say that then, right? So then what's going to happen is we will simply save the payment. So now let's simply payment and then repository dot should and then dot and then save. And what we are saving is the actual payment and not payment request. So payment here and then payment here as well. And this will be payment argument capture. So now I'm going to say payment argument capture dot and then capture. There we go. And now that we captured the argument, right, we can say payment and then argument capture dot get and then value. And let me save this into actually extract this to a variable. So payment argument capture value. There we go. And now let's simply say that assert and then that, and then simply import starting import and then org.assertCore.api. And now simply say payment argument capture value dot is equal to ignoring fields, and we want to pass the payment request dot and then get payment, and we want to ignore the customer and then ID, right? So because we know, so here we haven't set the customer ID, right, for the payment. And in fact, this is wrong, right? So let's actually say null here, right? So this is wrong. So this has to be null, right? Because here, so here we simply receive it here, and then at the end we set it. So this is what we want to. So this is what we want to test. So now I can simply say equals to and then ignoring fields, and the field I want to ignore is, so here, the customer ID, right? And then I can go ahead and simply say that assert that and then payment argument capture value dot get customer ID dot is equal to and then customer ID, right? So this customer ID is this one right here, and this one here, right, is this one that we set. So now let's go ahead and pretty much just run our test. So let's go ahead and run it. And you can see that it works. So now let me run this in coverage with coverage. There we go. Now if I collapse this and then go back to the service, you can see that we have these green lines, right? But we haven't tested, for example, the red ones, right? And that's what we're going to do next. So if you have any questions on how we have tested this method right here, drop me a message and I can give you further explanations. This is all for now. Join me in the next one. See ya.